Hi, my name is Gabby, and today I will be meeting with various specialists to discuss the skeletal system. First, we will meet with anatomist Dr. Anna Osius.
The skeletal system is made up of bones of the skeleton as well as connective tissues that stabilize or connect the bones, such as cartilage and ligaments. Bones are the primary organs of the skeleton and are made up of two different types, compact bone and spongy bone.
Describe the differences in compact bone and spongy bone.
Compact bone is dense connective bone tissue that appears white, smooth, and solid. Spongy bone is porous and located internal to compact bone.
Fibrocartilage is very weight-bearing. Where might you find it in the human body?
Fibrocartilage is found in the intervertebral disc in your spine, the cartilage pads of your knee joints, and the pubic symphysis.
We are now meeting with orthopedic specialist Dr. Jasmine. What two minerals are stored in bone, and what are their functions in the body?
The skeleton is a storehouse for two minerals, calcium and phosphorus. They are essential for the functioning of other body systems.
What are several examples of flat bones in the body?
Shoulder blades, the sternum, ribs, pelvis, the occipital, parietal, frontal, nasal, lacrimal, and hip bone.
How do the diaphysis and epiphysis of a bone differ in structure?
Diaphysis is a tubular shaft that forms the axis of long bones, composed of compact bone that surrounds the medullary cavity, while the epiphysis is the expanded ends of long bones, with an exterior made of compact bone and an interior of spongy bone.
What is the function of a nutrient foramen in bone?
Nutrient foramen plays an important role in nutrition and growth of the bones.
Bone marrow or myeloid tissue is the soft connective tissue of bone. Where is it found in the adult skeleton?
Locations of red bone marrow differ from children to adults. Adults have red bone marrow only in selected portions of the exoskeleton, such as the flat bones of the skull, the vertebrae, the ribs, the sternum, and the os coxa. Adults also have red bone marrow in the proximal epiphysis of each humerus and femur.
We are now meeting with specialist T. Babin Bone. What are the four types of bones and their functions?
An osteoblast is a mononucleated cell that bone develops from. An osteoclast is a large multinuclear cell associated with a maintenance of bone. An osteocyte is a mature bone cell involved with the maintenance of bone. And lastly, an osteoprogenitor is a stem cell, a precursor of an osteocyte.
What is the composition of the bone matrix?
The composition of bone matrix is 1/3 organic and 2/3 inorganic matter. The organic matter, synthesized by the osteoblast, bone-forming cells, is collagen and protein like glycosaminoglycan, protoglycan, and glycoproteins. The inorganic matter is mostly crystallized calcium phosphate salts and calcium carbonate, and a few other materials. Bone matrix is a composite, which means it has characteristics of the hard, strong inorganic matter and some flexibility and give from the collagen.
Explain bone matrix formation and resorption.
The cellular activities of osteoblasts, osteoclasts, and osteoclasts are essential to the process. Osteoblasts synthesize the collagen's precursor of the bone matrix and also regulate its mineralization. As the process of bone formation progresses, the osteoblasts come to lie in tiny spaces, leucinae, within the surrounding mineralized matrix are then called osteocytes. The cell process of osteocytes occupy minute canals, canaliculi, which permit the circulation of tissue fluids. To meet the requirements of skeletal growth and mechanical function, bone undergoes dynamic remodeling by a coupled process of bone resorption by osteoclasts and formation of osteoblasts.
Think of bone matrix like a concrete poured among rebar to form a basement floor. The collagen fibers are the rebar, and the ground substance with hydroxyapatite is the concrete. Without the concrete, the rebar bends, and without the rebar, the concrete crumbles.
We are now meeting with expert Dr. Taylor. What are the primary ways that hyaline cartilage tissue differs from bone tissue?
Hyaline cartilage contains a population of cells scattered throughout a matrix of protein fibers embedded within a gel-like ground substance. The ground substance differs from bone because its inorganic salts do not include calcium. Bone tissue is hard tissue that forms the skeletal structure of the body, while hyaline cartilage is more resilient and flexible. It also contains a high percentage of water, like 60 to 70%, than bone tissue.
Where do interstitial and appositional growth of cartilage occur?
Growth of cartilage occurs within the internal regions of cartilage through a series of 4 steps, while appositional growth is an increase in width along the cartilage's outside edge in a 3-step process.
This is expert Dr. Alaney. Identify bones that are produced by intermembrous ossification.
The bones that are produced by intramembranous ossification are the flat bones of the skull, some of the facial bones like somatic bone and maxilla, the mandible, lower jaw, and the central part of the clavicle, the collarbone.
When does intramembranous ossification begin? What bones are formed from this method?
Intramembranous ossification begins when mesenchyme becomes thickened and condensed, with a dense supply of blood capillaries, and it continues. Bones that are formed are flat bones of the skull, some facial bones, the mandible, and the central part of the clavicle.
Differentiate between intramembranous ossification and endochondral ossification.
The difference between intramembranous ossification and endochondral ossification is intramembranous ossification forms the flat bones of the skull, face, jaw, and center of the clavicle bone. Bone is formed in sheet-like layers that resemble a membrane. Endochondral ossification forms most bones in the body, mostly long bones, and replace cartilage with bone.